Calling from a 571 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, this is Dan Norton from California.
Dan from California. What's on your mind?
First of all, on my introduction, instead of saying I'm Dan from California, would it be all right if I say I'm Dan Norton 1 from YouTube?
Sure, you just did.
Okay, just for future reference. All right, so in a couple of my calls
make a note.
before...
Wait, did you write that down, Bradley?
So in a couple of my calls from before, you brought up Social Security in connection with Ayn Rand. And so on that, I think there's nothing wrong with her taking it, or nothing hypocritical, because her view was not that.
Dan, when did we have this conversation? Just so we're all on the same page.
October of 2021 was the first time when you brought up the issue of Social Security in one of my calls.
Okay.
And it came up again last October in my last call.
All right. So you're breaking tradition by calling mid-year. That's fine. Okay. I think I remember now. Okay. So you take issue with me bringing up Ayn Rand being on Social Security because I said it was hypocritical. And you think it's not hypocritical because this is the system that you're dealt with, and she paid into it, presumably, because you need to, because it's taxation. And so why shouldn't she take it? Is that the point?
Yeah, basically. You didn't say she was hypocritical, but I got the sense that was likely your view.
Oh, and no, no, I agree with you. Like, people say, like, hey, if you want to have higher taxes, why don't you just pay more in taxes? And I'm like, no, that's not the point of taxes. Taxes are for everybody to pay in. They're supposed to be a policy. And I don't think you're hypocritical if you take Social Security, even though you have been arguing against government programs like Social Security. I mean, it's possible, and I, will cop to not having read Ayn Rand since I was much, much, much younger.
You're good.
But it's possible that she, had broader sort of like feelings about how what it does to you to take money from the government that maybe I would find to be hypocritical, but I would have been surprised if I had talked about it being hypocrisy. No, I think the point of her taking that money is not so much hypocritical, but how effective and important it is in our society. Because presumably, right, she had access to all of the wealth, growing power that like the stock market would have provided, or the free market. And the fact that she needed to take Social Security, I think, is indicative of like a lot of people in this country. In fact, as you know, I've said, I'm sure on one of our calls, or at least in times I've talked about Social Security in the past, that when it was introduced, it kept 2/3 of our elderly out of poverty. So I think the reason why I would illustrate that point was even Ayn Rand knew the value of Social Security and needed it.
Okay, so no, actually, so I would dispute the last point that she needed it. She did not need it. She died wealthy, and she left, I think, around $500,000 to her heir. I mean, she was a very wealthy author. She was getting lots of royalties from her books. So she didn't need the money, but she had a right to it. Some of the money.
Oh, I agree with you. She definitely had a right to it. And if it was up to me, if she really was that wealthy, then hopefully our taxation clawed back, the money in such a way so that it wasn't, that if she was receiving income, in that age, it was clawing back some of that money. But okay, I have no problem with wealthy people getting Social Security as long as we have taxation that, make sure that they're paying their fair share of taxes.
Well, when I say she had a right to it, I don't mean she had like a political right to it, because I don't think anyone has a right to live off of other people's money. What I mean is she had a moral claim to it, or a moral right. Like if money is forcibly taken away from you, then I think it's reasonable to, if you get some of that money back, then that seems perfectly fair and reasonable. but the money should not be coercively taken in the first place. That was her objection to Social Security. It wasn't that you shouldn't take it if you can get it, but you shouldn't be forced to pay into this system in the first place.
Right.
But
that is the dues we pay for society, and we have decided as a society that we don't want 2/3 of our elderly living in poverty, and so we have decided to have taxes. Now, of course, I would also argue further that we would have no society as we know it without taxes. B, that it's not her money, it's not your money. It is, and if it was, you would be able to burn it, but you're not able to burn it. It's illegal to burn your dollars, as you know, because it is Uncle Sam's money, and we use it as a currency. And the fact is that currency has value because the one entity that has a monopoly of power only accepts one thing in terms of paying its taxes, and that is the dollar. And that's why money has value in that sense. Taxation is what gives that money value as opposed to like puka beads.
Well, I mean, I think the value of money comes from the things that it represents, the goods and services that it represents. Like if you have inflation in Zimbabwe or wherever, or Argentina, where you have people with wheelbarrow fulls of money that represent nothing, it's worthless. So money in itself, you can print money, and our government does that. It can print trillions of dollars,
yes.
And then we get inflation. What really gives money its value, I think, is the goods and services that.
But the point is why does someone give up their goods and services for the U.S. dollar? All right, let's just make it simple so that we can talk about like what happens in our daily basis. Why do they give that up? Why do they take U.S. dollars as opposed to something else that might be valuable to them? The reason why they do it is because money is the best. U.S. dollar, particularly when you live in the U.S., that has value outside of obviously our borders. But let's just say this, so that we can limit this, so that we can really understand this concept. The reason why we only take dollars for our membership, let's say, to get the fun half. The reason why we only take dollars instead of like stuff like, liquid IV packets or whatever it is, stuff that I consume, is because those dollars are not only fungible, and I can use them everywhere. It's because everybody pays their taxes in dollars. It's the one consistent thing that gives value to our dollars. In fact, you should read David Graeber's book about money. The late David Graeber, he explains this is how the Roman Empire would use their currency. They would go into a place. I'm not suggesting that we should be imperialists, but this illustrates how the value of money. And they would say the Roman currency had no value, thousands of miles away, except for the fact that the Romans said, incidentally, we're here. We want to buy a chicken for our soldiers. We're going to give you this money. And they go like, well, why would I want Roman coins? How's that going to help me? And they go, oh, incidentally, we're also charging a tax. And you can only pay in the Roman coins. So we're going to give you 2 coins. We're going to take one back for tax. Just, I'm being, this is just as an example. It's not specific. And that's what gives it the value. And then, that's why with those 2 coins are going to actually be worth it for you for chickens. Everybody's going to be paying taxes in Roman coins. So you're going to be able to trade Roman coins for things of value, because ultimately it's the one thing that's going to keep you out of jail, because you got to pay your taxes.
Well, I do think money could have value even if there were no taxes. Like if you imagine an island scenario, like we've talked about some island scenarios in previous calls. Like if you imagine people are on an island, like at the beginning they could just barter with each other, and there might not be money at all involved.
That's
but
right.
It becomes inconvenience to just have to barter everything. So if you create some medium of exchange, like money or like dollar bills or gold, that everyone agrees on, then it facilitates transactions.
Well, that's the beauty of being on a tiny island. I mean, I remember when I was in college, I went to Jamaica for spring break because there was discounts because of riots in Kingston, I think, at the time. And we had no currency except for these little plastic shells in the hotel. But here's the point. We live in a country of hundreds of millions of people, and not everybody is going to agree on the same currency and agree that we're all part of some type of thing. That's why someone from New York who doesn't know anybody in California can use the American dollar. Now, it's true on your tiny little island scenario, people can decide like, hey, we're just going to use coconut shells as a currency, and we're going to go back and forth. But the fact of the matter is that like you cannot have a society that is in any way, even remotely more specific without a currency.
I just want to drill down on this point a little bit, caller, because like we can do the Robinson Crusoe stuff, but you love money so much you want to take it out of deprive 2/3 of elderly people of it. The greenback in America, when did that form? Do you know?
Well, I don't want to deprive elderly of the money. I want them to keep what they earn.
Sure, whatever.
I think you're the one who
let's get
deprive them of the money
let's
by
get back
taking
to
it away.
history. Okay, so greenbacks. When did that form in America? When did those emerge? Greenbacks.
I believe that was around the time of the Civil War.
Right, and that went up and down in value a lot during the Civil War. Was that because of the goods and services, or was it maybe because of how well the Union Army was doing?
I'm not familiar with the reason that the value of the greenback went up and down.
I'd look into it.
I mean, I don't know
I think the point is that
I
we're trying
think
to.
the government shouldn't mandate a currency. Like I think there should be a free market in currency, and there used to be like banks could issue their own notes. And I think in Scotland.
Why do you think that changed?
The government. Why did the government start taking over the currency?
Well, why do you
with
think it
Federal
was?
Reserve System?
Why do you think everybody having disparate currencies was changed?
I don't know the economic history of the U.S., but I know in Canada and Scotland there was free banking, and there were far fewer runs on the banks.
Right. Okay. Why do you think that changed?
So they were actually better than the U.S.
Why do you think that changed?
Well, I think that this gets into some deeper philosophy, but
not philosophy. No. I'm specifically actually trying to keep it out of philosophy, and I'm trying to ground it into reality. Why do you think that system of everybody issuing different currencies for stuff wouldn't have been effective for what merchants wanted, let's say?
Well, I don't know that it wasn't effective.
Why do you think it went away? Do you think it was stomped out because of the authoritarian nature of government?
Well, this is where I do think philosophy could be relevant.
No. I don't want philosophy. I want actually reality. Reality.
Read a book.
But philosophy applies to reality.
No. I don't want something that applies to reality. I want the description of why that happened, because clearly you have spent a lot of time thinking about this. So surely you have gone back. You just cited to me real things in history where you had disparate sources of money. And I'm asking you, why didn't you keep reading to see why it went away?
Well, what I was about to say about the philosophy, I think might help explain it.
Then I don't want to hear about philosophy. Did you read the history or no?
I read some history, including the history of philosophy.
Dan number one from YouTube. What I would like you to do is read that and then come back and summarize it for us.
All right.
Thanks,
that
man.
can be my homework.
Okay, appreciate the call.
Thanks.
You should do a video.
It's very frustrating, I think, like when engaging with any right winger, whether it be a libertarian, when they refuse really to deal with the material facts in front of us.
Start talking about Daniel Defoe thought experiment.
Right. It's like this only makes sense when you completely strip the reality and context from everything you're talking about.
Yeah, let me opine on this without looking into it at all, except for maybe some like broad like logic that people think I can help. Decide history.
I am sympathetic with this because when I was in college and I would take a philosophy course, instead of like actually reading the different philosophers, I'd come up with my own philosophy and say like, I'm doing philosophy. It just happens to be Sam Seder's philosophy. And my teacher go like, yeah, that's good, but that's not the question. What question was it? What Sam thinks about this? I was asking you to read some Hegel and say, what was Hegel thinking about this? Or to read some Kant and say, what did Kant think about this? It's nice that you have thoughts, Sam, but that's not relevant to what we're actually doing. That is sort of like our situation. Tim Pool's economics researcher. Also, David Graeber explicitly discusses this island barter fantasy in his history of debt. It's called the myth of the barter for a reason. Jobby Boonier. If I were on a tiny island with a few people, I would just work collectively and not have currency. And if anyone else on the island wanted to have a monetary system, I would smash their skull with a coconut. Then we wouldn't need a currency anymore. Ian from the Northern Virginia, free market currency, LOL, asked the caller how crypto is working out. Well, crypto is working out as a commodity. It's just like it's a commodity.
A way to get currency.
Well, and now it's in this stage.
Exactly.
Where
It's a way to get the currency you can pay your taxes with.
Yeah, crypto doing well means it's doing well in the value of dollars.
And then sometimes it's being like kind of imposed onto some of the poorest countries in the world by disaster capitalists who have like the only safe haven left is to exploit people whose currency is even more volatile than like say Bitcoin right now. So it's not great.
Fart Wayne, not as good as his other calls, but I needed that. Thanks, Dan. Dave from Jamaica, I think that caller wasted his 3 years on an infertile island. Emma's distant cousin, it's been credited to Margaret Thatcher that the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money, to which I counter, the problem with privatizing everything is you run out of your own money a lot quicker.
Yeah.
St. John Motley, Sam's #1 Dan, merch when? ? New dad, for what it's worth, actual island states, even when there's very few people, do in fact use fiat currency. LOL. Fizzy drinks. You know what it is, Emma? It's like the trolley problem.
Oh, right. Yes.
Swing
One
state.
forget.
Bummed to hear that we're not that into thought experiments because I was about to call in with about 20 of them, mostly involving using pineapples for money. Daredevil. Dan Norton, I have a job for you. Teaching Alec Baldwin how to shoot blanks.
Jesus, man.
Libertarian caller should research the history of wildcat banks that propped up after Jackson dismantled the U.S. bank.
Right.
Nick from PA, Sam, please trade me coconuts.
Of course, yeah, the Confederates had to make the gray back.
Congressional baseball fan, Sam's legacy, Roman monetary theory. I think about it daily. That is from the Graeber book. Anthony Stoner. Oh, yes, just what I've been missing. Libertarian calling in to debate Sam on some nonsense or other.
He's the only one left, I think.
We should sell bags of shells and call them libertarian currency.
Private money.
Yeah.
Exactly. But and we would sell it in another currency and then convert that currency into dollars. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.